Record to the cloud. Hey, everyone. Welcome to Ideas to Done. I'm Sarah Hawkins from True North Business Management. And this is a once monthly program where I talk to some of my favorite people about how they get things done in business and in life. And my guest today is Karyn Kelbaugh. She is a business buddy of mine. We met online in, gosh, I don't even remember how that happened.
But anyway, we can get in 2016 at least.
Yeah, and we can get into that later, the importance of making connections and networking and learning from each other. But first, I just want to tell folks a little bit about Karyn's bio. This is a great bio, by the way. Karyn Kelbaugh is a research nerd, self-professed, I didn't say that, who loves interviewing other people's customers. Her goal is to empower small business owners with social proof and client insight so they can get more of their favorite clients. She's the one you take with you when you have to mingle in a room full of strangers. You can learn more about her done-for-you customer research services at heykaryn.com, and we'll repeat that email later on. But I love that little bit of business there about being the one that you take with you in a room full of strangers. I would say that, actually. Somebody probably said that to you, which is, well, I'm gonna stop this screen share and let you take over. Karyn wrote a fantastic blog post about mastering your client feedback and how she helps people do that. And so I invited her on today to talk a little bit more about that. So, hey, Karyn.
Hello. Thank you very much. This is a good way to spend a Friday.
Yeah.
It's Friday,
Happy
right?
Friday. It is Friday.
We made it to Friday. Please tell me we made it to Friday. Yeah, so I am a nerd. I'm fine with being a nerd. I've owned up to being a nerd. It's just who I am. And yeah, like we were saying before, it's like, what am I talking about? I'm just going to write it down because this is the best way for me to explain it. And I don't know if you read the blog post, but basically it's just about the idea of having a purpose for your data and knowing where you're going to put it. It's specific to client feedback in this instance, but just the idea of having a plan of what to do with your information makes it much easier to find and easier to use when you actually need it. So that was kind of like the super basic how to get from having an idea to doing something with your idea.
Perfect. And I did read your blog post.
Thank you.
What I liked about because this is the school of thought that I'm in also, is that it really doesn't matter like what tool you use, as long as you have one. And I love you've got the container, and sorry, now I don't remember the container and the what?
Categories.
The categories. So talk about that. We've got, as long as you've got a container and your categories, you'll be able to access your stuff.
Right. So just a little back up a little bit. If you haven't read the blog post, the whole premise is that if you're in business, at some point, someone's sending you feedback, whether it's constructive feedback or praise or something you'd like to use as like a quote or a testimonial or something that you think, oh, that would be useful someday. Or this person just said, you just helped me sell out my new program or something great. And you're like, oh, that's a good one. And you email them and you're like, hey, can I use that as a quote on my website or on my Facebook or whatever? And they say, sure. And you're like, great. And then you just leave it there. And you're like, yeah, because it's in the moment. You're like, oh, I'll remember that. It's in my email. I can find it later. And then 3 months later, that's happened a few more times. And you're like, okay, I have to write a new landing page for something. And, oh, Sally said that thing and it was really good. I need to find it. And then you just have to sit there and dig. And you're just, it's to avoid that kind of situation. And if you're in the situation where you've gotten way more than 3 and you get it all the time and you're just dumping it in a folder or leaving it in your email, it becomes so overwhelming that 9 times out of 10, you just leave it there and you go, no, I don't need it. It's not that important. I'll be fine. And so this idea is to just help you do a little bit of work up front, making some decisions so that when that email comes in and you say, and Sally says, sure, you can just copy and paste and stick it where it goes and put a little label on it that says gushing quote, or, you know, whatever label you decide to use that means these people said I was awesome or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And then you put it in a container that's just for that sort of thing. And then 3 months later, when it's time to write the landing page, you go to your little container and you go, oh, I need things that make me sound really smart. And you've labeled things that make me sound really smart, which can be a real label that you can use because you can do this however you want. And then you click on it and there's like 5 things that say, oh, that's a good one. Oh, this one fits perfectly right where I need it. You copy, you put it on your landing page and you're done. You didn't have to spend hours searching because you spent the time up front deciding what it was going to be for.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So in specifics around the containers and the categories, container, somewhere to put it, categories, a label so that you know what it's for. And containers, like I said, it can be a stack of notebooks. Like if you're old school and you're like, I don't want any of this on the computer, I like writing it down, whatever. I don't care what your container is. If you have a stack of notebooks and the top one's things that make me sound really smart, the second one is feedback on stuff I need to fix right away. Like someone says, hey, this link to your program doesn't work anymore. And you're like, oh, well, you should have already fixed it. But, you know, you're getting the idea.
Yeah.
Stack of notebooks. Evernote, if I know a lot of people are huge Evernote fans, Evernote can be a great container for this kind of stuff because it has a great tagging system.
Yeah.
And structure. If you design, I mean, even if it's a giant black hole of data, as long as you tag the data the way it needs to, you can find it right away.
Mm-hmm.
And then I have a personal favorite, which is Airtable, which if people don't know about Airtable, it's basically if you took Microsoft Access and made it pretty and user-friendly and connected it to everything on the internet. It's basically, it's like, oh, this is pretty, it's not ugly. There's tons of free templates.
Yeah, and I'm just going to interrupt and say Microsoft Access, for people who aren't even there, is like a spreadsheet. But
on steroids.
I mean, what's that? On steroids, exactly, on steroids. So you can, I mean, I'm thinking, and this is actually how, I mean, I've seen ads when I was first introduced to Airtable, was on an ad in Facebook, and it was like, why are you still using spreadsheets? And I was like, good question. What do you got for me? So,
and an example like of how I use Airtable, because I don't like to have to go and dig up bits of information if I don't need to. So what Airtable and several other different programs allows me to do is to keep everything in one spot. So I made my little database, and this is the database I use with my clients. I fill it up with data for them, and then I give it to them. It's like, ta-da. So say I have client Sally Jones, right? And Sally Jones gave me some feedback, or I interviewed her as a follow-up interview and got some really good quotes or some really good pieces of information. And so I've got Sally Jones in there, and then on her like client line, I can upload a copy of the testimonial text. I can put the date that I interviewed her. If I've created any media out of her thing, like, so say I made a cute graphic that had a quote that says, Karyn is a great nerd, whatever, and I don't want to just have it buried somewhere on my hard drive, I can upload that and attach it to her in the little database. And then I have a second, because it's a database, so there's a second little spreadsheet that has each piece of data. So each quote, each piece of feedback. So I've got maybe 4 entries from Sally, and each one has the text, Karyn is a great nerd, and then it has a little tag next to it that says like things that make me sound really smart. And it might have 4 or 5 tags depending on which we can get into. But so that's all connected to Sally. And that's kind of how Airtable works. You can have one person in there connected to all different points of data. So that's why I love it. But you don't have to go full database. I know people like Trello. I know Asana. I mean, anything that has any sort of categorizing tool as part of it, because I know Trello and the cards You can have tags on all the cards. So you can just have cards that have people and what they've said about you. So whatever works with your brain works. The second part is categories, and that's what makes the container useful. Otherwise, it's just a big box of data. And you're like,
you got to find it.
That's not really better than an email inbox at this point.
Yeah.
And honestly, if you can still use your email inbox, like you wanted to go super, super low maintenance on this, you get the email from Sally, and then you put it in a folder in your email inbox that's got a little category, or I know you can put tags on emails depending on which email system you use. You don't even have to take it out of your email if you want to tag it within your email, as long as it's easy to find. So the categories, the important part with categories or tagging, I'm going to use these words interchangeably. Tagging, coding, I don't mean HTML, I mean nerdy research language like qualitative coding. Using words to label things. Labeling, coding, categorizing, tagging, all to me mean the same thing here. The important part is deciding ahead of time what you would like your categories to be. And even if you just start with one group of categories, it could be something as simple as quotes, constructive feedback, things I need to fix, or anything. It could be like a few little things just to get you started. It can be really overwhelming to think, I don't know what categories I'm supposed to pick. The easiest way to think about what categories to pick is thinking about how you're going to use the information. So this is full reverse engineering. How are you going to use the information you're getting, and then think backwards from there. So that's how you label it. You label it for the use, because when you're in the mood to use it, that's what your brain's going to think of, and it will make the most sense to you in the moment. So do you have any questions about that? Does that make sense?
I don't. I just want to make a comment that's helpful for me, because I am a terrible tagger categorizer person. I will name the same thing something else, and then I'll file it, or even in my hard drive, I'll file a folder someplace or a document, and I'll be like, I know I created the document, I can't remember what I called it or where I filed it. And so then I'm always using a search to try to find it. And this is not a very good advertisement for myself, but that is a challenge. That I can't find my documents. Except when it comes to, that's my own personal stuff. I'm much better with my client work, because that's all, it's like all the client stuff and there's specific work that I do for my clients. Saving my face here by saying that, but that's true.
Like with
my
own,
with my own stuff when it comes to managing my business, which is where this kind of thing comes in, what you're talking about in this particular instance of, when the client says a great thing about you, you then want to put that in a place where it can be reused. When, if ever, does this data get stale?
I usually, unless it is like a quote that it all has a different purpose for quotes or things that you can directly attribute to a person, have a link and a photo and all that. I usually, it depends on your client turnover. It depends on, if you only have a couple clients a year because you do these big projects, then a good year or two is fine for, because you're doing these big epic things. If you've got a really lots of clients and quick kind of a process for getting through clients, I usually say stuff older than 6 months to a year. And if you've got newer stuff, especially if you're iterating on your services or changing your delivery style or anything, because you are changing as a business and you want the quotes to reflect your current offers and your most recent stuff. And there's just going to be quotes that are better than other quotes. When you get one that comes along and you're like, oh, this is going where that one is and that one needs to go because it was nice, but this one's so much more on point, right? As you get better at delivering your services, and you get better at asking for feedback, you're going to get better testimonials and quotes. And so some of it's just kind of natural, but it's good to go through and do kind of an audit, like, okay, these are all at least a year old. I've got new stuff I'm trying to sell. And so that's where it's helpful to go after fresh stuff. And this is the other part with this whole data tracking. I don't want people to feel like they have to go through their piles of emails and everything right now and just start, like, it's like this big chore. Just start right now and move forward, because before you know it, you'll have plenty of information to use. And if you want to go back and look through and kind of practice and go, well, how would I tag this? And maybe use the data you have to figure out what categories to use. That's useful. And then as far as non-quotable data, because I think sometimes we don't think about all the feedback that we got that wasn't quotable, but it's still useful. I think that it has a longer shelf life, just because it shows us how we are reaching people. Like, because you can use language that somebody used in their feedback to maybe talk about, if you're looking at pain points or something where, okay, everyone's saying that this is why they found me, this is how they found me. And so you could use that language. And then just for kind of history, like as you go along, if that changes, you know, keeping it so that you can look and you're like, okay, well, 6 months ago, this is how people were finding me. And now this is how people are finding me. What's changed? And just to kind of, when you're doing reflection on your business, that stuff I think can stay around as long as you need it to. So those are like the two different categories of data. So unless, the only exception to the quote things, like if you have like a famous person or an internet famous person who has a lot of clout, you can keep them around for as long as it feels appropriate. Like if you wrote an article 5 years ago and it got published in BuzzFeed, you're like, I'm not even doing that anymore. Does it really count? The other thing to watch out for is if the people who you have quoted have changed their businesses, and the links on your site to them aren't good anymore. So that's just a thing where you're like, okay, if you had a health coach and now she's doing financial advising, and you want to update that, even if the quote's still good, you're like, hey, are you still doing this? Is this still relevant? So you just want everything to be really relevant.
Good to remember. And I'm realizing as we're talking about this, we kind of jumped into like, what do you do and how do you do it, as opposed to the why. Like, so what is the point of gathering all of this data and then organizing it and finding it, and like, what are we going to do with this? You mentioned sales pages, and so like, why is this important?
The reason that this is important, feedback in general, is just useful in helping you improve your business. It's letting you know if you're actually serving your customers. It's kind of like that reflection back to you from what you're putting out with your business, and to let you know if you're on the right track, if you need to make some adjustments. So overall, the concept of just getting feedback is letting you know if you're actually on the right track. Specifically quotable feedback, so testimonials, quotes, stuff to use for case studies, all of that falls under what we call social proof, which I know people have heard of, but not everyone understands. And the basic, like at the psychological level, social proof is just something seems more okay to do because I saw someone else doing it. Like, it's the basic level. Like, 10 other people bought that kind of hairspray. I know one of them. My hair's like hers.
Yeah.
It might be okay to risk $2.50 on that hairspray, and it's simple as that. And then there's different kinds of social proof for different scenarios. Like, for for tech startups and those guys, they have a lot of numbers. Like we've this many happy clients and this many likes on things. Like all of that is social proof because it's proof that somebody else liked it, bought it, thought it was worth investing their time in. And then you can get more social proof that speaks to emotions and speaks to anxieties. Like I was really worried about spending money on this, but it was the best decision I ever made. Now I feel this way. And before I felt this way. Like I've got people where if they've met with a financial coach or somebody and before they felt like their money was controlling them and now they feel like they're in control of their money, that's a feeling transformation that I'm like, I want to feel like I'm in control of my money. I'm going to click this link and read more about this coach. So it's just a little bit of somebody else did it. So it's less risky for me to try it or to read it or to buy it. So that's like the point of having social proof is it's not just me saying it, it's other people saying it that I didn't pay to say it. You know, it's like genuine.
In fact, they paid you because
right.
this is a service. Yeah.
It's essentially like digital word of mouth, for lack of, another way to put it. So that is why it is useful to have stuff out there that's a little more in your control. Like you can't control how many people like your posts. You can't control lots of different elements of your social proof, but the ones you can control that you can put out into the world, you should, because that's, it's going to help you bring in more leads and bring in more eyes on your business.
And so this is what you help people do.
Yes.
Right. So people hire Karyn to talk to people that their former clients or current clients to find out what's so great about them and what the transformations are. I mean, in probably like super simplifying this, but you said something to me like when you first started doing this, and I'm probably going to get this wrong, but you said to me that people find it easier. They're telling a new story. They're telling you a new story. That's what it is. So if I ask my client, what's so great about working with me, they're going to tell me a different story than they would tell you, not because so much that they know me, but because they're telling it for the first time to a new person.
Yeah, actually, this is I haven't written a ton of blog posts, but I wrote one on that. And it was just basically the idea, if you've got this assumed knowledge with the people you're working with, and you're talking about the nitty gritty stuff every day, and there's stuff that you just don't bring up because it's obvious. Yeah. And you don't feel like you need to say it. And also when you've been working together, especially if it's a really like professional relationship and not too chummy and, casual, to all of a sudden go, well, you make me feel secure about my money. Like, okay, that's like a boundary. I don't know if I'm ready to go there. Like it can make people awkward. Yeah. And so that's just one example of where your clients, you're not in the room. Like they know you're going to read it or see it later, but you're not in the room and they get to tell their story. It's about you, but it's really about them. And so you get to, it's less when you're in the room asking the question, it's still possible. It's totally possible to get feedback from people yourself. But there's just this little twist on it that when you're asking, so do you like me? Like, it's just a little bit uncomfortable for people, at least in our culture, that to just blatantly say, so tell me what you like about me. And you could just be like, well, I think you're awesome. And, when you just ask them like point blank like that, it can be a little tricky. And there are definitely better ways to approach asking people. But when you have somebody else do it, it just takes that certain little bit of awkward away, and they just get to talk and tell their story. And the way I do it, we basically kind of do a narrative, like before they worked with you, how they found you, what it was like, and what it's like been like since. And so they get to tell basically a narrative kind of story, and things come up that they forgot about. There'll be little anecdotes, and those anecdotes are usually some of the best quotes and little pieces of information. And they get to, a lot of the times, this is the first time they've processed their experience out loud to anybody since they are done. I can't tell you how many clients are like, they'll say something like, I haven't had any new debt in 12 months. And they're like, wait a minute, I haven't had any new debt in 12 months. And they're just like having eurekas on the call. And so it can also be a little therapeutic because they get to just kind of work through it without the pressure of you being right there, and get out lots of information that honestly is a gold mine of feedback for you. It's not just about the quotables. It's everything they said, and just like all the little experiences along the way, and all the little things you can validate that you're doing right or tweak or whatever. So that's one of the things. The other reason it can be helpful to have somebody else, just because it can just be awkward for the business owner to make the ask and to know what to ask and to feel comfortable. And so a lot of it is just saving time and relieving awkwardness.
Excellent. Well, thanks. I see we've got Lorraine with us. I don't know if she's got any comments or questions or things if she'd like to chime in, and we can just pause here to see if we've got any questions. And if so, Lorraine, do have a question. We've got a chat question here. Okay. If you'd like to, I think you can take yourself off mute, or if you'd like me to take you off mute. Not everybody wants to be on camera or on mic, so I just don't want to automatically. There she is. On camera and on mic. She's doing both, jumping right in. Hi, Lorraine.
Hello. A question was how I, like you, could identify with the schmoz of things stored everywhere and disarray and
schmoz. That's
and what I filed today is not necessarily the system I use next week or whatever. Are there tips or good ways to organize like the tags that you use? Like that would be one question, is how best to organize that. And the second question was, if you don't know what you're doing or how you're going to use it, how do you start the reverse engineering process?
Okay, I'll go with the first question because it's easier. I am like super low tech when it comes to keeping a kind of a legend for things. I would either keep it on my desktop of my computer, like if I had a list, like, hey, this is how I'm tagging stuff, and call it, this is how I'm tagging stuff, and stick it on my desktop because I need stuff in front of me. Or I will print it. And hang it on the wall above my computer, like whatever makes me use it. So you have to know yourself and look at your desk or whatever your workspace is. I am a visual person, so if I need to know it, it's out. You don't want to see my desk. And it's on top of the pile of things that are slightly less important. So I will hang it up if it's something that I need to like get embedded as a habit. I will put it in front of myself. If you have no idea where to start, then I mentioned 3 like super, super simple categories you could start with, even if it was just quotes and it was more about what it was than how you would use it exactly. So you could do quotes, like general feedback, or if you have maybe more than one product or more than one service, label it by the exact thing they're giving you feedback about. So if you've got a winter coaching program that you do, then label all the feedback that comes in 2018 winter coaching feedback. then 2018 winter coaching quotes. And you can just label it by exactly what it is. Then as times come up where you think, okay, I'm getting ready to start the next coaching program, I'm going to go back and read my 2018 coaching feedback. And I need to start writing a sales page. Oh, I've got quotes from my 2018 winter coaching program and they're in this one thing. So maybe I could look. So even if you don't know exactly where it's going to go, if you start by just calling it what it is within fairly narrow categories, because the more specific your category, the easier it is to find and use later. So even if you just printed out a sheet of paper that, or whatever, a file that was all the programs you're currently running, anything you might be collecting feedback on, and come up with a tag for each of them, and then just start there. Does that sound reasonable?
Yeah, so it sounds like the more, it sounds like it's one of those things where you have to start using it in order to know how you will use it. So the more you use it, the more you'll the more you'll be able to go, oh, you'll be able to step into that reverse engineering part. So
right. So if you start with just like your products or your services and just associate like a feedback category and a quote category for each one, and you just started there, and then as you're labeling things, you're like, this group of them all kind of seemed about me, and this group of quotes was more about the product. Then you could say, well, maybe I'll add one this is about, like, I have an example and I can share the link. It's in the blog post of some example tags, and some of them could be like, I call one character witness.
That's it. Ooh, I think we lost Karyn for a second. Are you still with us, Lorraine?
I am still here.
Okay, good. We can just wait for Karyn to get unfrozen. In any event, the ideas that she's been sharing with how to, just
and less.
Oh, you're back.
I'm back.
We lost you for a sec. Yeah.
Okay, I'm back. The point being is to resist the urge to tag on the fly. Because that is where I get in trouble. I have certain categories figured out, but I also have a giant Google Drive that is scary. So nobody has this 100% figured out. But if you can avoid Googling or tagging on the fly, because then you don't know what you tagged. If you didn't write it down, if it's only tagged on the document, you're like, how did I spell that? Was I clever today? Did I use capitals? And then you got like 10 different things that say testimonials with different spellings and different ups and downs. So it's just, if you decide, hey, I think I'm going to add another tag, write it down on your little legend or whatever you have so that you know that that's what it's for.
So did you say you had a cheat sheet? Did I hear that?
I do have a cheat sheet. There is a link at the bottom of the blog post, and I don't know if I can share it here. Will this show up in the recording?
It should show up in the recording, yes.
Where did it go? It went away.
And what Karyn is looking for while she's looking for it is in her, oh no, that's okay, is in her blog post, there is a link to this cheat sheet that we're talking about.
There we go.
There we go. Now
okay, yeah. So that's a link to a cheat sheet with an explanation.
Oh, this is what you were talking about, the link. Okay, so I don't know that does show up.
It is. I just got it from your blog post.
Oh, you just got it from the blog post. Well, I don't know if that looks, so in the blog post, I don't know if folks can see on screen the link in the chat, but in the recording, I think it might be visible, but then again, maybe not. So friends, while Karyn is again taking a moment, there she's back.
You're back. I wasn't frozen. You were frozen.
There is a link that has category ideas. This is what it's called, category ideas for labeling your customer feed.
Yeah, I get.
Yeah, so that is just a tip for your use.
That too.
And in any event, so we'd like to keep this about between 30 to 45 minutes. So we can begin wrapping it up if we, I mean, Lorraine, if you had other questions or comments, we can certainly go on a little bit longer. I hate to cut you off if you're not done.
No, I'm good. I think Karyn answered the questions I had, and I think the cheat sheet will be super helpful.
Yeah, yeah. And so that's worth the price of admission for me is like, why not have a document which you refer to so that you can always go back to it when you're naming your files and tagging your documents. I think that's just brilliant. So in addition to everything else that Karyn shared, I want to thank Karyn for being my guest today on Ideas to Done, and for Lorraine for joining us. And once again, I'm Sarah Hawkins from True North Business Management, and this is the Ideas to Done show. We air once monthly on the third. It was twice a month, but now we're airing twice monthly on the third Friday of the month, 12 p.m. Eastern Time. And my next guest on February 16th is Wendy Sabin. It's funny that Karyn was talking about finances because Wendy Sabin is a finance person. She's a CPA, and she'll be talking about, she works with women on reinventing how they succeed in wealth, freedom, and business. And so that's on February 16th. To register for upcoming webinars, I'm going to bring this, actually I won't do that. To register for upcoming webinars, you can go to my website, that's truenorthbusinessmanagement.com/events, and you can register for upcoming Zoom chats and also get the archive from previous recorded webinars, plus accompanying blog posts. So there's lots of great information, people who have been sharing their ideas or their information, their expertise on getting things done in business and in life. So, the Ideas to Done show. That's a wrap. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.